Thank you very much, Professor Cleland, for a very thoughtful analysis of the demographic questions that the world faces. They are extremely serious and need, I think, let me call it a mental reset of much of international policies. It is very clear from your speech that an increase in contraception is extremely important for poverty alleviation. It is also extremely important for increasing female autonomy, and I think that one of the most effective ways to lower the number of children that are born unwanted. Your graph indicated that 20% of children born are not desired not desired pregnancies by their mother. They may be very desired after they are born, but in such situations, of course, there is also a high correlation with poor feeding and poor schooling and poor care. So many of the unwanted children grow up in much worse conditions than wanted children. So contraception is extremely important. And I would like to submit that this is first of all a question of advocating contraception at the highest levels in international organizations, and only secondly a question of money. It is a subject that is not discussed easily among diplomats and ministers and cabinet members and heads of state. And it should become, because it is so crucial to the future of mankind, crucial to the 3 billion people who will be born in a very complicated dangerous world in the next decades. So the first role, I think, of a country like the Netherlands is to put this issue, the subjects that you touched on in your speech, on the agenda of international organizations and help overcome the threshold which is still there, not only among conservatives, not only among people of Roman Catholic, more conservative convictions. We find it everywhere. So this is not a question of money, but of thought, of speaking out and drawing attention to this important subject. It is also extremely important from an entirely different angle. You focused on the high correlation between a young population and civil unrest. That correlation is also very clear in the case of war and civil war. Countries with a high percentage of young people have a much higher chance to fall into political violence for a number of reasons. One of them, of course, the large number of unemployed and often poorly educated young men in a world which is poisoned with small arms, which also changes power relationships in tribal and traditional society, in families, in local communities, and has many other upsetting effects and socially destructive effects outside the area of civil war. There is a general consensus that it's also very important to focus improvement of education, particularly on girls. 70% of the world's poverty problem is the problem of women and girls. Men usually are able to get a higher share of calorie and protein consumption. Poverty is feminized for about 70%. And that, of course, means that in our development cooperation, we should focus many projects on and programs on increasing education and the autonomy of women, support for women's groups, and for the role of women in local development councils. That's also the best way to circumvent corrupt governments and waste of money in official development cooperation. An entirely different conclusion, which appears from your analysis, is that it would be very wise for the European Union to invite Turkey into the Union within a reasonable period. Turkey is likely to become the largest member then of the European Union. It is, I think, growing to about 95 million people, while large European states like Germany and Italy will decline, particularly Italy, quite rapidly. This is, of course, politically a very contentious issue, but few people look at it from the point of view of the demographic balance in Europe in the long run. I admit that it's politically very sensitive, and that as the European Union takes decisions on membership by unanimity, the risk of a country stopping the process of accession is high. If a country with a not so favorable attitude towards Turkey and Islam calls for a referendum, the whole process of 15 years of negotiation might halt. So that means that it would be wise to find a solution in time by improving the ties between Turkey and the European Union step by step, and avoiding the disaster of an anti-Turkish referendum in one country or another. Another interesting point which you raised was the large cohort of people above 65 years. And you emphasized, and I think that's a very sound idea, the need to have flexible retirement policies, and also as a means of, let's say, equity, focused at not so much on a particular age, retirement, but on the number of years that people worked, because that also shifts attention